But we do want to begin by first recognizing and introducing in the first time individuals who have come to join NORA tonight. And if you are first time, give us your name, and if you represent individual congregation or union or organization, let us know. So are there any persons tonight? This is your first time visiting.
I reckon that would be me.
All right.
I'm Jocelyn Imani, native Nashvilleian, currently living out of town briefly. From Riverside Chapel, Seventh Adventist Church. And my sister friend, colleague, comrade, Andrea Kinzer, should be joining momentarily. She's also from Riverside.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, my name is Wendy Longmire. This is my first time attending. I attend St. George's Episcopal Church. Thank you all for allowing me to attend, and very interested in what you're doing with affordable housing.
Oh, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we do thank, oh, sorry, anyone else? Okay, I do want to thank our two friends who have come to be with us this evening, and we pray that you will learn a little more about NORA. And if your congregation or organization are a part of NORA, we ask that you will take it back and ask them to become a part of NORA, a great justice group here in the greater community of Nashville. At this time, we're going to approve our minutes. If you've had opportunity to peruse the minutes, and if you
Reverend Thompson, the minutes were not able to go out because the secretary was tied up at a meeting all week. So
okay then. So we will do both of the minutes next meeting at our August meeting. Okay, we will go individually to our financial report.
Good evening, everybody. Here's the financial report. Do you see it on your screens?
yes.
Yes, it's clear.
Okay. The first column shows the actual income and expenses for January through June. The second column shows the budget for the full year, and the third and fourth columns show the differences in dollar amounts and percentage. I've highlighted some items. My screen may be too big to show the right-hand column. That's blocked by the images of people. So here we go. For the challenge grant match, we're considerably over budget on the contributions that were actually due to the 2020 match. When you combine the $8,500 in this year with the $42,000 from last year, we raised over $50,000 for the match. Then the next highlighted item down in individual gifts is ahead of pace, and that's because of the big payback and roughly $12,500 in individual contributions there. Going down to the $95,000 figure, transfer from reserves, the report does not show the transfers because they are not income. They're just transfers within NOAA, but they have totaled about $100,000, and that would bring gross revenues up to about 60% of budget. And the gross profit number would increase to about $180,000. Scrolling down to bank charges, that is ahead of budget because the fees for the big payback were 5.6%. And insurance was over budget because we had a bill from last year that was paid this year. And we've paid a year's worth of IT because we're swapping CRM programs. Down to the very bottom line, if the transfers from revenue had been included in this report, we would have actual income of about $35,000. So we're doing okay. And sorry I took a little long. Are there any questions? That concludes my report.
Okay, we want to thank you, Bill. We'll go on with our agenda. At this time, we will call for our part of our educational task force, who you will see for the commitments for the day of prayer and power. And we're going to ask Brian will be working with that. And Brian, did you have anyone that will be explaining a little more about the day of prayer and power?
Actually, I'm going to be taking that on tonight. I do welcome, I do see Liza Ramage, and Reverend Lester. If you all would like to add anything to what I have to say, hopefully without us going over time, then I definitely welcome that. But Reverend Thompson, I'd be happy to give the description of what the Day of Power and Prayer is about, and take it from there, if that sounds okay.
Okay.
Okay, so the NOAA Education Task Force is looking at some very stark numbers across our state. For example, African-American children in Tennessee, not just Nashville, are suspended 3 times more often than their white, Asian, Latinx, or indigenous peers. A study in 2016 showed students report more than half of Tennessee schools reported police, but no counselor, psychologist, nurse, or social worker. And while 60% of schools in Tennessee employed a nurse full-time, only 53% of school districts report having at least one school nurse assigned to multiple school. 53% of school districts report having at least one school nurse assigned to multiple schools in their district. And the last stat I'm going to read is that only 36% of districts meet the goal of one certified psychologist for every 1,000 students, and less than 20% of Tennessee districts report meeting the goal of one certified social worker for every 1,500 students. So these are the numbers that we're looking at. When the Education Task Force, following what the Criminal Justice Task Force started doing in NOAA a few years ago, when the Education Task Force looked at suspensions in Nashville, they saw that 3 times as many African-American children were being suspended as white children. And when our Education Task Force took on this issue, they managed to get the school district to stop suspending kids in elementary school until the district realized they didn't have the funds to have the right kind of support in place in order to keep from suspending kids. So because, as the district told us, they didn't have the funds to provide the right kind of training to teachers and to school personnel, they continue to suspend kids, continue to put kids in the school to prison pipeline. So what the Education Task Force is doing is looking upstream to the state. And we're saying, what the Education Task Force is saying is that the funding formula has to change. There has to be money in the funding formula to provide more social workers, more nurses, more counselors. And overall, the entire formula needs to change, but we need to see a difference. So what the NOAA Education Task Force has done is to reach out to our sister organizations, Micah in Memphis and Caleb in Chattanooga. And together we are organizing what we're calling the Day of Power and Prayer for August 15th. 2021, coming right up. This is going to be a virtual and an in-person event. And the purpose of this event is really to call public attention to these issues and to target our governor, Governor Lee, and as well as legislators that we're going to get to know, to get those power players to push for legislation that will increase the numbers of social workers, nurses, and counselors in order for us to reverse these trends that we're seeing and to bring about more justice in our school system, because we believe all children deserve a place in classes and deserve to learn equitably. So I don't know if Liza or Reverend Lester would like to add anything before we get into a roll call, or if there are any questions right off the bat.
Well, I can add that it's NOAA's first statewide action. It's pretty exciting. And as you think about how many people you're going to get out, it's really important that a lot of people attend this event. It's going to be a great event with broadcasts from Chattanooga and Memphis and here. And like Brian said, the point is to refocus attention from whatever budget, whatever, to our actual children and the needs of our children right here in the state of Tennessee. So thank you, Brian.
Yes. Thank you, Liza. I think, I know Marlee had a question about virtual and in person. So in each of our cities, we are going to have a venue where you can show up in person. We're looking for a space that has a large capacity because we want to be able to provide safe distance for people, because COVID-19 is not gone. So we want to maintain some protocols around that. But we're also going to be broadcasting, as Liza said, from the different cities. So if you'd rather participate virtually, you can do that too. We would love to have as many in person as we can possibly have, but short of that, we're looking for virtual participation. So
Brian, give the time also.
our time is 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Central
I think
Time.
it's 3 p.m.
What? Sorry.
I think it's 3 p.m. That's what the flyer says, but
I think it's 3.
Aha. Someone pointed that out to me recently and I had not noticed that. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the flyer real quickly. Aha,
but
okay.
1 p.m. is kind of quick after church. I'm thinking that's not it.
Okay, there has been discussion of holding this actually from 1 to 3. So I think that we need to get back together as the leaders that are organizing this and clarify that. So I want to apologize for not having that in place right now, but we're still asking you to organize. We're asking you to make some commitments and to organize in your member organization. This is something that NOAA did prior to our October 2020 public meeting. It's something that the IVE working group spearheaded and is ready to do alongside the Day of Power and Prayer leaders, state funding leaders as well this time, so we can really get a good turnout. So I'm still going to put something in the chat right now. This is a Google form that should allow you to think about who in your organization is going to be a leader who will help organize the rest of your organization, that's going to talk about the Day of Power and Prayer, and that's going to hopefully preach about it, put it in bulletins, have one-on-ones with key people. If you have a core team, because we just did a core team training this past weekend, if you have a core team, this is an opportunity for you to activate people on your core team and work together to on this turnout strategies. So that is in the chat. I do encourage you to reflect on it and to fill it out. I will see the results and we will be in touch with you.
Ryan, it did not show up in the chat for all of us. You might have accidentally sent it to
That went to Jane Borum. Wow, Jane, I don't expect you to fill this out for everybody. Thank you, Mike, for pointing that out. This is coming to everybody in the chat.
Okay, and Brian, we are running short of time now, so
Yes.
to do the commitments.
Let's do the commitments, and I do want to see, Mike, did you email me the roster? Or I'm looking right now.
I've got it
Okay,
here.
there
I
we
just
go.
put it up. I thought you wanted me to put it up.
That's even better. Okay, so thank you, Mike. Do we have anybody from Almeda tonight who can give a numerical commitment for Day of Power and Prayer? Anyone from Anaweem?
Here I am.
All right.
I'm going to go, we're small, so I'm going to go with 5 and hopefully we can get more, even if they're not from Onaway.
Okay, great. And just so everybody knows, I will be tweaking the permission on that form. It looks like you can't open it right now. I apologize. I will do that once we get through the roll call.
Could I get some clarification? Where, if the in-person meeting, where is that supposed to be?
We are still finding that location,
Okay.
Irene. That's a great question. We should have that answered by no later than next Wednesday.
Okay.
Thank you. Beach Creek, anyone from Beach Creek wants to make a declaration tonight?
I'm going to say 4.
4, all right. Thank you, Cindy. Belmont UMC. All right, I know I saw Kay Bowers on. Kay, you can come back, or Liza.
Well, I did. I'm sorry, I had to unmute myself.
All right, sure.
25.
25. Those are the kind of numbers we're looking for. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You got to help me, Liza.
I will.
Clark Memorial,
5.
5.
Yes.
Thank you, Grace. We skipped Christ Church Cathedral,
20.
20. All right. Community Relations of the Jewish Federation, Congregation Micah.
So this is in person and virtual, correct?
Correct. You can give us your full amount, and when you see the form, you'll be able to select which.
25.
25. Thank you, Arlene. Downtown Presbyterian, if you're in the house. Okay. Eastwood Christian.
Wow, this is inspirational, you people. So I'm gonna say 15.
15. All right. And so you've got time to reflect on this, by the way, and see what you're made of, and boost these numbers. All right. Keep that in mind. But these not looking bad. Edge Hill United Methodist.
15.
15. Thank you, Bill. Episcopal Diocese, Beloved Community.
Yeah, this is Natasha. I'd say 25.
25. All right. 15th Avenue Baptist.
15.
15. Thank you, Gladys. Friends of Friend Ministry.
3.
3. Thank you, Reverend Thompson. Glendale Baptist, are y'all here?
I think you skipped First Unitarian Universalist.
Gosh, yeah, I need better glasses. First Unitarian Universalist, don't want to skip you guys.
We're going to try for 30.
30. All right. All
Here's
right.
the competition happening.
Glendale Baptist. I don't think we have a Glendale person. Let's go with Gordon Memorial. Greater Bethel. Greater Nashville UU.
5.
Okay. Thank you, Doug. Howard Congregational.
3.
3. All right. Thank you, Jean.
Brian, there's a commitment in the chat from Nashville District AMEC 12.
Thank you. Thank you. That's Reverend Merritt and the Nashville District AME Church 12. Thank you, Reverend Merritt. Kairos Ebenezer. If Dewana is on.
Hey, this is Dewana and 15.
All right, nice. Lee Chapel.
10.
All right, thank you, Paulette. MNEA. Metro Interdenominational. Napier Luby.
I'm sorry, I was muted. For Metro Interdenominational, I will go with 20.
20, yes. Thank you, Regina. All right, I'm gonna move kind of fast, so I hope everyone is on your toes. Let's move on down to New Covenant Christian Church. Open Table. Organized Neighbors of Edge Hill. Payne Chapel AME. Safer Schools of Nashville.
4.
4. Okay, thank you, Matthew. Second Presbyterian.
10.
Okay, thank you, Laura. SEIU Local 205.
35.
35. Woo. Okay. Spruce Street Baptist. St. Anne's Episcopal. St. John AME. St. Vincent's Catholic Church. The Temple.
10.
10. Thank you, Erwin. Village Church. West End Synagogue.
I'm going on a limb and saying 10, but not 100% committed.
All right. Got to strengthen that limb. West End UMC. West Nashville Dream Center.
15 for West End.
15 for West End. Okay, thank you, Phyllis. West Nashville Dream Center.
3.
Okay, thank you. Word of Life Christian. All right. We do get to see folks from Naaman's Retreat. And
3 for Naaman's Retreat.
3 for Naaman's. Thank you, Reverend Thompson. Brentwood UMC.
5.
Okay, thank you, David. Christ the King. And I see we have American Baptist.
Oh.
Some of these down at the bottom are ones that have not always been at our meetings, but if anybody's here and wants to make sure that you're counted, let us know.
Thank you, Mike. Maybe that's the best way to handle this from here. If you are here, if we didn't call your name or we didn't call your organization, let's give you a few seconds here to speak up. Temple Baptist Rutherford.
Yeah, 30.
30.
Better not forget them. Hey.
Heck no. All right. Anybody else we're missing? We missed you this time. We will find you next time. Don't worry.
St. Vincent de Paul 2.
St. Vincent de Paul 2. Thank you.
And Brian, that Nashville District AME, that's 12 over there in the.
Right. I think.
Yeah, I inserted it farther up.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for.
Great.
Thank you for.
Okay, and you have a total yet?
I'm working on it. Let's see how fast Excel can do it. Okay, give me one little second here. Excel is great, but I'm not. I got 379.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, Noah.
And you will be hearing more information. We'll make certain that the time and the location, the day of power and prayer meets tomorrow, and hopefully we can get some of that information out, and all of you will receive that information. I want to again thank this committee for this action. We want it to be a great action. At this time, I'm gonna ask if Kay Bowers will introduce our guests at this time.
Thank you, Reverend Thompson. We have with us tonight Dr. Abdugani Bar and Dr. Garrett Harper, who work with the Department of Metro Social Services. And Abdugani will correct me when he comes on, but my reports that have been produced by this department on basically kind of the state of the state, how are people doing in Nashville, go back to 2009, and they study data and information and then compile it into these really helpful and useful reports annually called community needs assessments. And the kind of things that they look at are economic and social well-being, economic mobility, community systems and infrastructure, and then emerging trends. And all the things that NOAA has been working on since we started, and many of us have been working on it before that, are all connected to the issues that Abdugani and Garrett study on a daily basis. And they are, in my view, treasures in Nashville, unknown treasures. Some people don't know about them. I know them very well because they're my go-to people for data and information to make sure I have my facts straight before I go into any discussions on policy and direction with elected public officials. And so Abdugani and I have been good friends for a long time, and we wanted to make the connection between the information in this report and our folks in NOAA so that we all can be equipped with tools in our toolboxes when we have important discussions and plan important actions like the upcoming action in August. And you heard some of the troubling data around that. So how our kids perform in school is directly related to poverty and lack of housing and moving around. The school to prison pipeline, it's all directed and it's all connected to the conditions that these men and their colleagues study and report on through their work with Metro Social Services Department of Planning and Research. So I'm going to turn the time over to AB, as I call him, and Garrett, and let them take it from here. And thank you both so very much for taking time out of your evening to come and be with us.
Thank you. Garrett, go ahead.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Kay. And I will get the screen here. Okay. And thank you for the kind introduction. It really is a pleasure to share with you some of the findings from this year's community needs evaluation. Kay, yes, as you mentioned, this has been a report from Metro Social Services for the past 12 years. And in recent years, we've also added the tagline to that state of well-being, because the mission of this organization is to address and empower, along with partners, the social and economic well-being of the residents of Nashville and Davidson County. So really a high-level view. I'll go rather quickly through that, and opportunity for questions and any comments that anyone has. But certainly it was an unusual year. Goes without saying that historically we would find nothing quite like what's presented in this slide of unemployment from what was a historic low for us in recent times in Davidson County, albeit with caveats attached to that, with about 10,000 residents of the county unemployed and then the spike with the lockdown and preceding months, raising our unemployment rate to nearly 16% and over 60,000 persons unemployed. That begins to subside across the year, but as well, there are important caveats attached to that, where we close out calendar year 2020 with what appears to be rather a lower unemployment rate. Certainly it was, as the metric reports that, but we know as well that many discouraged workers and others that left the labor force were no longer a part of that calculation come the end of the year. It was the historically highest rate of unemployment in Davidson County since those measures have been calculated in modern times. 2019, by some appearances, was a rather better year for us than some of the other recent years. One of the challenges that we face in data is that we don't have the full report on 2020, and we know from everything that we've experienced as a nation and society that there are some rather extreme cases of change that have taken place that we'll only begin to see as data continues to come out in the months and even the years ahead. In year 2019, the American Community Survey of the US Census reported that there was 12.4% of Davidson County residents that were living below the 100% poverty level, and that was 83,000 persons resident in Nashville. Additionally to that, you see the data here of those Nashville residents working full-time jobs with average wage below $12 an hour, and that was nearly 40,000 workers residing in Davidson County who experience those conditions in their working environment. We include a number of maps of census tracts, so well over 100 census tracts in Davidson County, and portray some of those key characteristics that Kay had mentioned. Here, looking at the poverty conditions, 1 in 10 seniors 65 and over in Davidson County lives below the poverty level. That has remained a relatively steady measure over the years. And again, this is reported for 2019. So we know that that was a high water mark in terms of progress, much of which has eroded again in 2020 and beyond. 1 in 5, about approximately 20% of Nashville's children, 18 and under, live in poverty. As we see those census tracts portrayed in the map here, and sometimes the question is, what are those areas in there without a color? And some of those are where there's insufficient data, the airport, Cockrell Bend, Radnor Lake, those few pockets within that. But we certainly see the pattern there that's going from as low as nearly 0.3%, to as high as 72%. That there are census tracts, and we see the clustering effect of that in the interior of the city, much more predominantly in minority majority census tracts. That's certainly an evidence, and the pattern emerges pretty quickly in that, where the intensity of poverty is displayed in Davidson County. The red is everything from 24% again on up to 72%. This was a new feature that we added in this year's report that takes into consideration what often is a question for us in Nashville is, how does that compare to cities that we like to compare ourselves to? So as we think about the metropolitan area, Nashville, our central county is Davidson County. Some of those other cities, metro regions, each have their own central county. And how does the poverty rate look in those? So I'll just go down the list there. On the left, it's Davidson County, of course, ourselves, and then Franklin, Columbus, Ohio, Fulton, Atlanta, Georgia, Hillsborough, Tampa, Florida, Jefferson, Louisville, Mecklenburg, Charlotte, and Travis County for Austin. So those are pretty familiar cities to us that we often like to think are those peers of Nashville in a lot of ways. But the display here in terms of the color intensity, red being the most high, shows that Davidson County for most of the decade experienced a poverty rate higher than nearly all of those. And the very bottom row of this is the United States. And we see that Davidson County's poverty rate was higher than the nation for most of the decade as well. 2019, things begin to look improved for Davidson County, but even at that, compared to those other counties, not a great deal of change in relation to all the things that have occurred with regard to job growth and economic change that's occurred during the decade just passed. Certainly the education factor as a part of this, both past, present, and looking forward for what we can anticipate as change, and would be optimism for that change. But here we find some of the data points that only 1 in 5 MNPS students is deemed ready to graduate with a regular high school diploma and meet success milestones in college, in post-secondary education. That's through scores on the ACT, through scores on the ASVAB, military aptitude test, and for students that may have taken college credit courses in high school. So only 1 in 5 students is deemed ready to go on to post-secondary education. Also, college completion for those that have graduated from MNPS and gone on to post-secondary education, that level of those individuals completing college within 6 years has gone down as a metric each of the years since 2013. And then lastly, in the data point that
It's like you're frozen.
is up to 20 to as high as 43% of the adults in those census tracts lack a high school diploma. So many, many implications for workforce present and into the future, certainly. The food insecurity issues, which have just predominated our lives and our society and news over the past year plus. Feeding America reports that Davidson County population experiences a food insecurity rate of 12.4%, even slightly higher for children at 14.4%. The map here shows households that receive SNAP by percentage, again by tracts, from a low of 0 to 5% in the dark green. We see where the clustering of that is primarily in Southwest Davidson County, but then it reaches up to, in the red, 20% or higher, 1 in 5 households, to as high as 57% of households in certain census tracts are recipients of SNAP benefits, a direct correlation there with food insecurity and hunger. We look at the issues of health insurance in Davidson County. Most recently, the uninsured, representing slightly more than 1 in 10 of the residents of Davidson County, 88% insured. This has remained relatively stable in recent years. Prior to the full enactment of the Affordable Care Act, it was ranging in the 13 to 14% and higher, and has moderated to this level, but still leaving more than 1 in 10 Davidson County residents lacking in health insurance. Lastly, in the map portrayal, here we take up the issue of housing. It reports in the most recent year that nearly 20% of homeowners spend more than a third of their annual household income on housing, and 46%, nearly half of renters in Davidson County spend more than a third of their annual income on housing. That the average housing costs for shelter are approaching $1,200 a month. And the box in the blue there reminds us that the average house price in Nashville is 5.6 times the median annual household income, and it certainly has escalated sharply in recent years. The data portrayed in the map is a little different here insofar as it's not a percentage, but it's an actual count. These, again, are the census tracts reporting households with income less than $50,000 a year that pay 30% or more of their income for rent. And here we see some very low numbers in the green, under 100, but then rising in those areas of red to nearly 500 to well over 1,000 households in a given census tract that are in that situation of earning less than $50,000 and paying more than a third of their income in rent. And that was important to portray it in that way, because sometimes the percentages in that can be misleading. It might be a very high percentage, but there might be relatively few households that are in that particular category. So this was a way to display where there are large numbers, large volume of households that are in that situation and experiencing that housing condition. Then we added what we think our perspective on a number of these things. As Kay mentioned, the well-recognized cycle of poverty, how there's an interconnection between work, housing, transportation. As we look at each of those, health, and in the past year, everything from physical health to mental, emotional, spiritual, the education factor, family structures, community, the social network that households and individuals have that are vital links toward them achieving higher levels of economic mobility that others may possess and that those individuals lack. The issues of race, the deep levels of trauma and disaster, which our county in 2020, and all of that, those legacies that are prominent in neighborhoods and communities that continue to demonstrate outcomes related to many of those categories of variables, which we've just seen. A unified effort that in order to address poverty, it's addressing all of those, each and every one, and the importance of attaching effort across the community toward that. Everything about household life connects to each of the others, as we will recognize. Aligning these approaches to the point of innovation and deep commitment, recognizing that in our society, we each and every pay the price directly and indirectly for communities and individuals, households that are experiencing inadequate levels of social, economic well-being. Trying to pull back a little bit to understand why these things persist, why these conditions after a decade of growth and change are at the levels they are, perhaps misunderstandings of poverty itself and what this multidimensionality is, the lack of continuity across time from elected officials, institutions, the community at large, and certainly aligning economic and community development efforts with an idea that well-being is the end metric, that measuring all things by their impact on well-being takes a different turn of thought and perspective to how a city and a community attaches to problems and challenges that it faces. And then lastly, the local decisions have enormous influence on well-being, that it isn't always Washington or the state, but the things that we do as a community and as a city that have and do make a difference. Looking at evidence, what evidence proves to us that works, accepting those, embracing those, rejecting those things that have been disproven for their lack of effectiveness and efficacy. And then lastly, and I'll turn it over to Abdul Ghani for comments, the idea of a well-being cabinet, that idea of leadership working together in concert with the understanding of these perspectives around poverty. So with that, Abdul Ghani.
Thank you, Dr. Harper. I just would like to share two things that make this report meaningful. I think one is, we said there's a misunderstanding when it comes to poverty. And we know that so many people, so many organizations in this town, public and private, faith communities, have been trying to address poverty, but again, it seems that it's just getting worse. And the reason is that people misunderstand poverty because there are structural things. It is not just about feeding more people or providing handouts. I think there are three major transformative changes that happen in society, and we need to understand those. Number one, there is an increase in the number of households headed by single parents. I think that is some statistic that many people are not paying attention. What that does is that that person would be stuck at home, not being able to participate in the workforce, not being able to secure childcare, and also would end up not completing education, not being able to save, and always being in chronic state of financial struggle. So I think the society has missed that, the impact that has on many households when there are single parents. Forget about children coming to school with emotional and other issues. I think the other major transformative that happened is the labor market changes. I think globalization has damaged the American economy. There's no manufacturing anymore that's competitive, that pays living wage. You don't see anymore as many people working in that industry. Many of us are now competing to work in a service industry that's known to be low wage industry. Technology also has reduced the number of workers that many employers seek. Now there are only very few. What that has done is that to make large number of people competing for service jobs that don't pay much, and that suppresses wages. The other thing is that the damage that's done to unions is a real one, and that has damaged the bargaining power of unions and the families that support and the family members that they support unions and even non-union members. But that is something that is a major transformative in the labor market. Also, the arrival of many low-skilled immigrants in this country. There are studies that demonstrate that they're competing with the low-skilled native-born Americans in certain industries. All of this has done to have a large number in society that are what we call non-earners, or those who earn very little. So the latest statistic that we have is about 40% of the American population are non-earners. They don't earn any income from labor. And that's a real challenge that makes to overcome poverty very difficult. The third transformative change that happened in society is weakening what we call the safety network. About 40, 50 years ago, those were very helpful to assist many families through AFDC, housing vouchers, and other benefits. Today, those benefits mean nothing. And then there is still an attack from Congress and many other politicians that think that welfare is what's making this country bad and we need to eliminate it. So I think those three major transformative in households, labor market, and safety net is making poverty very difficult to be addressed through just major programs that just are relief programs. The final thing that I need to address is what we're proposing this year, which is a well-being cabinet. I would leave to you a very provocative question, and you don't have to answer now. The question is, who owns Nashville? I didn't say who runs Nashville. I said, who owns Nashville? So what I think we believe that well-being cabinet is to do as far as to understand poverty and these structural issues that make it difficult for many people to come out of poverty. I think what it does is that also to evaluate and say that when I was talking about ownership is some of the actions that we take, and sometimes even with own incentive programs, businesses create an unintended consequences. For example, in the last 20 years that Nashville has been recruiting businesses, especially corporate headquarters. It has created the impression that we don't have the long-term workforce that has the talent to fill those. So what did we do? We imported people from New York, Illinois, California, and that has pushed gentrification. So we need our education system, first of all, to be tied to workforce. And our economic growth must have a purpose, otherwise it will have unintended consequences. So a well-being cabinet then will make it accountable and ask the question and say, who owns Nashville? And what kind of actions that we need to take so that they will not create unintended consequences. Finally, I think it ensures continuity. Sometimes we jump into some action and we say we need to promote this. In the middle of it, we change course. So I think well-being cabinet is very important. It goes beyond poverty. It examines our education system, our workforce system, our development, economic growth, incentives, taxes. It will ask you those kind of things. One other thing that I need to remind people is that another transformative that many people don't understand is that because of urban renewal, if you recall, maybe 6 years ago, I wasn't here in Nashville. Many businesses were in the downtown business center, and many communities were living close by, finding jobs in downtown, riding the public transportation system. So in the name of urban renewal, we destroyed so many neighborhoods and we pushed people to suburbs where jobs are farther, public transportation is not accessible. So many people are confined in their neighborhoods. They can't participate in the workforce. So we need to figure it out, among other things, how geography plays an important role in addressing poverty and well-being. I hope that would help to continue the discussion that we have. We are working with the mayor's office to create this well-being cabinet. And it doesn't have to be a government entity. It can be all institutions that are relevant in understanding poverty, but also creating that accountability and ownership. And we say, who owns Nashville and who needs to make decisions for it? With that, I send back to Kay, and thank you for having us. If there is any few minutes left for a question, we'll be happy to answer.
Okay, we want to thank both of you for your presentation and Kay for the invite. We do want to have a few moments. I do want to say, when we get to our task force and working committees, we were going to give you 4 minutes. So we ask that you would take 2 minutes or less in making any of your key presentations or keynotes. But at this time, we have several key questions that were in the chat. And we have time for at least 2 or 3 of those questions. And if those who would like to now just unmute and ask your question, and give a few moments for that. Avi, you had a question. Would you like to address that question? Anyone else would like to?
You're muted, Avi.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Reverend Thompson, for the opportunity. Garrett and Abdelghani, so much applause to Metro Social Services for your annual report. It highlights exactly what our city needs to know. My question is, do people in City Hall read your report? What recommendations, specific recommendations might we make to City Hall to address poverty reduction, aside from building our housing inventory, our affordable housing inventory? What steps could a city government take to help people in need? And my concern is we do so little in this city. We rely on nonprofits to do the largest share of the work. And these nonprofits fight for the same donor dollar. How do we get our city to address poverty reduction more seriously?
Well, I thank you, Avi, for the comments. Yeah, the city government, especially the mayor's office, has seen the report and has appreciated. And we were invited to speak to the mayor's cabinet, department heads, and other elected officials who all understand what we are discussing in this. As I said, I think there is no one item that any city can do. It's all interconnected. But as I said, unless we all understand how all these factors reinforce each other, just addressing, putting more money in the school system is not going to do it. Because look back, if we are talking about only 20% of Metro Nashville public school graduates are prepared to successfully complete college. There are all these things that stem from the neighborhoods, from the incomes of the households. So I think ownership is a very important, I know I'm repeating that. What it does is that it allows us to ask and say, what is it that we are doing? What kind of value system as a city that we have? Are we becoming a city that encourages gentrifying and bringing workforce from out of town? Or we are a city that encourages living wage, a public school system that at least 50% of graduates would be able to go to college and then fill our workforce. So what kind of value system that we have, Nashville? And I think that's a question that you all need to ask each other. Asking a few more dollars in the budget to build the housing is not going to cut it. Avi, 169,000 workers in Davidson County only make $35,000 a year. So how many households are we talking about that will not be able to pay even their own rent or mortgage? 169,000 workers making $35,000 in the IT city. Something is broken in this system when it comes to how we address our issues, how we promote businesses, how we make economic development. So to make it short, let us develop the well cabinet, but have a value system that's embraced by everybody, not just to be a subject of election results. No, it needs to be something that's permanent, that regardless of who becomes the mayor, council, nobody, all elected officials have to embrace a national value system.
All right, thank you. We have time for one more question. Matthew, did you want to address your question?
I'm all set. Thank you, though.
Okay, any others? Irene, and unmute.
Yeah, okay. This is not so much a question, but just an appreciation for what Abdogani had to say about, I see maybe a difference between understanding and actually having a value system that is going to make some difference about what we understand. And I appreciate your making both of those observations.
Reverend Thompson, could I just ask one quick question?
Yes, go ahead.
Abdogani, what's the process and timeline to get a well-being cabinet in place and up and running?
We are trying to be very cautious and careful in addressing this issue. I think Nashville does not lack good people. We have great institutions, great faith communities. Think back. We had years ago Nashville Agenda, Nashville Next, poverty reduction initiative. The reason that some of those things missed the mark is not we don't know what we are doing it, but I think we were unable to understand what is it that we want to do. And I think when we misdiagnose problems, it makes it difficult to address. So I think we need to acknowledge first that it is not lack of effort that Nashville is in this way, but we just need to have the real effort. So in that case, we started engaging communities, elected officials and others, but eventually it's the mayor's office who will be able to, we are advising, giving input, and they are really working very hard to make this one successful, because we learned the lesson is that emotionally we can all gather tomorrow, and then after 2-3 years we are like dead. But we see how Nashville is just becoming a runaway train, and most runaway trains end up in a bad place. So to make your question, the mayor's office really is working very hard, but also we are engaging. That's why we are here today addressing to you all. We are making the rounds and engaging others, but we want to make sure that we carefully set up something that's going to be sustainable, outlasting. But again, we're talking about developing a value system. That's not easy.
Okay, we will have to stop at this time, and if, I see some other persons want to ask some questions. If we have time remaining, if our guests will remain on, we will go back and be able to ask some more questions. But we want to go to our next agenda item, and I think it's a good transition to what we just heard. And I'm going to ask if Marley, will you at this time be prepared?
Thank you, President Thompson. That was a great setup. So much of NOAA's issues are interconnected, and we really believe that the truth as well as the power lies in that intersectionality. And so Erwin Vennick is going to give a presentation, and y'all have heard us talk before about this Nashville Living Wage Initiative. It's something we've been working on for years with a lot of people. Again, Nashville's a small, big city, and none of our egos can win any of this alone. So we really open up our arms to lots of people and lots of folks that are trying to do good work to make this happen. But Erwin is going to do a presentation about where we are now and how NOAA, there's really some action steps at the end of what we need NOAA members to do. So take it away, Erwin.
Thank you, Morley. In 2019, NOAA joined with a coalition of community partners to sponsor Nashville Rising, a public call to end poverty in Nashville. Among the efforts that came from Nashville Rising collaboration was discussion about how to engage the business community in a voluntary effort to address poverty in Nashville. For the last 2 years, a small group led by Amy Meyer, who's a member of the EEJ task force, have been working intently on that project, which is now ready to launch. Nashville Living Wage has been part of the EEJ task force. Nashville Living Wage envisions Nashville as a livable community where all workers can not only survive but prosper. Nashville Living Wage exists to promote a just economy where workers are paid fairly, employers are successful, and our community thrives as a result. Nashville Living Wage is about educating the public and the business community about a more just minimum wage. Matt Tolbert, who's assisting this, will add a video and a one-sheet page explanation of Nashville Living Wage in the chat. Just to summarize, a just economy provides jobs with dignity and living wages, economic prosperity for individuals, enterprises, and communities, equal opportunity, employment opportunity for all people who have marginalized in our society, with a particular focus on race, class, and gender equity. Nashville Living Wage proposes to recognize those employers who pay the Nashville Living Wage rate of $17.40 an hour without health insurance or $15.40 with health insurance. That number did not come out of the blue. It is based on the survival wage of the 2020 ALICE report that is prepared by United Way of Tennessee, specific to Davidson County. The report methodology uses pre-COVID data from 2018 and can be accessed on the United Way website. A living wage in Nashville would be a survival wage of $17.40 an hour. This means that a person needs to make at least $17.40 in order to cover the bare minimum costs of living necessities. Those basic necessities include housing, childcare, food, transportation, healthcare, and a basic smartphone plan adjusted for different counties and housing types. New data on the financial indicators this year were rent burden, internet access, food insecurity, child care facility rate, and new higher wages. Nashville Living Wage will be having a public launch of its project on Saturday, September 4th, 2021. It will include a picnic and a march, and we invite you to participate. We will already have begun to certify employers who pay a living wage. Nashville Living Wage employers will be listed on the Nashville Living Wage website, which Matt has put in the chat and on the screen. And they will also be given a sticker to post at their place of business. So how can you help? First, we invite you to attend the public launch on September 14th. Second, please recommend to us employers who you believe pay a living wage by sending an email to info@nashvillelivingwage.com. Third, ask whether your own congregation, union, or other NOAA affiliate organization pays the living wage and engage in discussion about that. And finally, take the EEJ Task Force survey on living wage, which Matt will also put in the chat. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, and Amy Meyer is also on the call, and she's available to answer any questions you might have.
Oh, thank you. Anyone have any questions?
President Thompson, may I just say that the action item is really, again, with so much of what the earlier presentation was about. Oh, sorry, my video's not off. I was trying to get better internet service here. So much of what the earlier presentation was is about the problems, and really this idea of trying to focus on employers paying a living wage will help get to that. So we really, really ask the 59 people that are on the call tonight to please take that EE&J living wage survey that was in the chat. If you just take a few minutes, you can download it right now to your computer while it's on, do it a little bit later. But please take the survey because we need information. We need to be about action with NOAA. So we would ask for your help with that.
Okay, thank you. We have received some excellent information tonight from our presenters, and we hope that we will know how to use it, and please take the survey. Again, if we finish other business before 8 o'clock, we will give opportunity to ask any more questions. At this time, we're going to ask if any of our task forces or working committee will have a brief report. Again, we hope that you can limit it to 2 minutes or less. First, beginning with, I guess we have affordable housing. Kay, is there anything?
Sure, I'll just start. One of the current initiatives that's going on in Nashville is an East Bank study. It's a study looking at the East Bank of the Cumberland River around the Titan Stadium in that area. Metro has hired a consulting firm to come in and that has national and international experience to come in and do what they're calling a study about redevelopment of that area and what it might look like. And that redevelopment of that area also ties right into the area where Oracle is going to be developing its campus and all the development around that. So as housing advocates, we want to be engaged in providing consistent community input on, particularly around the housing issues, because we know that when development is done the way it's always been done, then we get what we got. And so our a collaborative group has come together, Stand Up Nashville, the Equity Alliance, Labor, and some NOAA representatives that have formed a work group to meet with key stakeholders and community planning, the director of planning and associates, and then to attend community meetings. They're being held this week, by the way, starting tomorrow, where the public can attend and make comment. So that's one, that's local. At the state level, work has also started with Micah representatives in Memphis and Caleb representatives in Chattanooga to begin to form a mechanism for working collaboratively to influence the things we need to influence in our concerns, just like the Education Committee around housing and how we can work collectively together. And then at the local level, we'll have meetings with the administration to get more specific information around what they outlined they intend to do with their budget initiatives and the monies that are going to be directed, new monies from the American Rescue Plan to affordable housing. And the last thing is forming a vision for what NOAA's response should be to the mayor's Housing Task Force report that was just published, and what we do around that and what our response should be like.
Okay, thank you. Criminal justice, again, would you give us just a brief report? Jane, you muted.
I'm trying to do it. I sent my report to Mike. It's written up and he said that he would put it in the chat room.
Oh, okay, then we will make sure that everyone.
I sent him earlier today.
Oh,
It's
okay.
typed up.
We'll have that in the report, and we'll make certain that all of the information that we need to get out, Mike will send it to everyone. Okay, again, do you have anything else, Marley, economic equity and jobs?
I have so much, but I'm going to talk really, really fast because this is really exciting things. So 3 action items I want everyone to take tonight. 1, fill out that Nashville Living Wage survey that you just heard about. Please, please, please. Number 2, a week from tonight, I dropped this in the chat also. The folks that are trying to repeal the tax, which would make gentrification worse in Nashville, which NOAA has come out against about the property tax years ago. Though it is in the courts right now, the folks are getting smarter and they're going to keep pushing. So we need to be smarter right now. Next Tuesday night, a bunch of us are going to gather at the MNEA and NOAA office. We have this amazing outreach tool. It's called Reach, and we're going to train folks on how to do it. You really just send text messages out to your friends and start educating them about why this matters. So we would love to get NOAA leaders trained. It's seriously so easy. So I dropped in the chat box. You can sign up for that. So please join us next Tuesday. Then finally, linking back around to what Erwin talked about, we are going to launch this Nashville Living Wage at our annual Labor Day event, which is Saturday, September 5th. And y'all, it would be so amazing to have NOAA people. We've been doing this as labor unions here in Nashville for probably almost the past decade. We meet at the Cumberland Park downtown. We'll talk about it more. Hopefully President Thompson will give us a little bit more time in August because it will be coming up then. But save the date for the Saturday before Labor Day. Join your labor friends and just good folks. And we have food and a parade, and it's just a live band. It's a lot of fun. And we're going to be launching that Nashville Living Wage. So save the date for Saturday, September 5th. Thank you.
One question, do you want us to have commitments that at the next meeting?
That would be fantastic.
Okay, so please remind me at the executive committee meeting.
Great. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, next, education.
Well, I have a full 4 minutes, but I'm going to try and squeeze it into 2. The first thing I want to do is brag on our SEL committee because we like to talk about successes, and SEL worked hard enough this year to have some big successes, meaning that SEL funding is bigger and better than it has ever been in the Nashville schools this year. And that is because the SEL committee showed up with the mayor and with the school board and at the city council meetings talking about the budget. They also had a very great press conference. And the result is that advocacy centers are funded for every elementary school in Nashville. This is a brand new thing, and it is a huge success. It's not everything. We also wanted restorative practice assistants in every middle and high school, and the MMPS board wanted that as well. That is not yet funded, but the funding that was achieved is a big, big success. I mean, the state funding committee is doing so much, but you've already heard about the Day of Power and Prayer for Our Children. Mark that date, August the 15th. We need lots of people to attend. It'll be a great event. The academics committee is doing great work on equity, the lack of equity in advanced academics, and gifted and talented programs, getting out some data. They've written a great letter to the editor that should be published soon. And also, well, there's so many things to say, but we have some powerful and passionate members at the school board tonight to talk about how we want inclusive curriculum for our children, in opposition to the moms who are speaking about how we can't have inclusive curriculum. But we got some good speakers tonight at the school board meeting, and I'm over time, but the Equitable Curriculum Committee is working on some great ideas for actions in opposition to that bill that our state has passed that is trying to not allow discussion of racism or LGBTQ issues in our classrooms. So state law suppressing discussion in our classrooms, and the Equitable Curriculum Committee is working on actions in regard to that. Thanks. Sorry, went too long.
Okay, thank you. And last report from Integrated Voters Engagement, our IVE.
I am taking that on tonight because we had this very exciting Sunday with our core workshop, which was a project that especially Susie and I worked on, but I see a lot of people in the Zoom room tonight who took leading roles, including Carlene and Shirley, and lots of people, Arlene, lots of people too many to name. So thanks everybody, and thanks especially to the almost about 50 people who actually turned out to that. And especially to the people who left with new energy to really build a core team at their own congregation. And we hope that continues to move forward. We talked about what was effective in our core teams and brainstormed together. We talked about building support systems. And so hopefully we will be moving forward soon with building something of a support pod of groups of congregations, core teams to support each other, and to have support also from IVE. So that's definitely moving forward. It's not too late to learn about core teams if you didn't make it to the meeting. We do have the recording, I believe, from the session. We have the handout. So if you weren't able to make it to the meeting, but you want to make sure that your congregation or your organization has a strong core team, please reach out to me or Susie or Rutherford. I think we're all on the meeting. And also our next IVE meeting is on the 24th, I believe, at 5 p.m. And we'll continue the conversation there, and hope you can nope, our next 27th at 5 p.m. and I hope you can join us.
Okay, thank you. At this time, Mike, will you just give a couple minutes on upcoming Gamaliel training?
Yes, sir. I'd be glad to. Just very briefly, the Gamaliel National Leadership Training is July 25th through 29th. This is virtual this time. This is probably the last time it'll be virtual, but that makes it easier to get to, obviously. And it's also less expensive. So if any of you would like to know more about that, please just drop me an email or give me a call. I'm putting my email in the chat right now. Also, the Intasaki is a special women's organizing training that's September 23rd to 25th. If you're interested in knowing more about that, we can get you information. And finally, the Gamaliel Race and Power Summit is November 9 through 11. And I know I haven't really tried to explain a lot of these because we don't have the time, but if any of them sound interesting to you, please email me. The National Leadership Training is sort of the core training that goes on. And that's where you learn a lot about how NOAA works, how organizing works, and how to really make a difference in our city. How to do what Abdelghani was talking about, turning values into action. Thank you, Reverend Thompson.
Okay, thank you. Again, if we've almost caught up with our time. We do want to ask if there was a major question that you need to ask. I don't know if our guests are still on, but if there are any other major questions, I could maybe take one or two other questions before we have our evaluation. If not, we will have our evaluation by Brian.
Right. Thanks, Reverend Thompson. Thanks, everybody. So if you're new, we always evaluate our meetings. We're trying to learn what went well, what can we improve on, what did we learn? Who are we now at the end of this meeting? So we always start with a feeling word, and I'm just going to ask everybody if you would express your feeling in the chat. Drop something in the chat. And again, we really want you to focus on like a feeling word, what's in your heart, what's in your gut, not just like what you're thinking about. So I see that Erwin is feeling enriched. Kimberly is informed. Arlene is overwhelmed. I don't know if I'm going to get to everybody, but I see appreciative from Susie, information overload from Kent, frustrated, excited from Martha. Dr. Cummings is proud of the work of NOAA. Avi is hopeful. Regina Davis is excited. Evangeline Watanabe is challenged and encouraged. Awesome. Inspired, Reverend Lester. So some really good feeling words in here. I do want to try to unpack one or two. Arlene, I think you were overwhelmed a little bit. Do you want to just tell us what that might be about?
Yeah, there's just so much going on. I mean, every single item that we heard about tonight is critically important, and we're doing a lot. It's just a lot to take in. And I'm overwhelmed by a feeling of I can't do everything. And yeah, that's what's going on.
Got you. Thank you. Dr. Cummings, do you want to elaborate on what you're proud about real quick?
Yes, I'm so thankful and grateful for the work of the task forces. I mean, it's incredible, the ideas that have come up, the work that the task forces are willing to do. So for the commitment and dedication, thank you all so very, very much.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move us into the second part of our evaluation. It's a four-parter. So the second part is performance. And this, we ask you, did we complete everything that was on the agenda? Was there anything that wasn't on the agenda that should have been? How did things flow, technically or time-wise? You can please feel free to put any comments you have in the chat. Martha Carroll, great guests. And other people, we can simplify this and just say, what was a highlight for you tonight? Like in terms of performance, like who really stood out for you, or what about this meeting really stood out? Presenters from Cheryl, thank you. Yeah, good everything from Ashley King. Wow, that always feels good. Well structured. Having guests was really great. Presenters from Gladys, thank you, Gladys. Okay, there was a little issue with the CJTF summary. So, that may not have been included, but, please talk with Jane if you want to learn more. They're doing some great work. Okay, so there were some technical issues there. Living wage was very interesting for Pat McDonald. Okay, is there anything that we could have done better tonight? anybody, anything that just, was a little bit not awesome or not, could have been a little smoother, more powerful even. Give people a minute to think about that. Arlene says, just don't pack so much in. Yes. Yes.
I just have a question. Will the presentations be shared? That could be helpful because there's a lot of information.
Okay. So kind of going forward, trying to share presentations ahead of time or at the end, make sure that we have all this information to share with people. Maybe that could be a little more smooth. Okay.
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
Will we be able to have access to the slides that were presented? I think that's great information to share with our core teams.
Great, great. So the information from Metro Social Services, Regina?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I know they did drop something in the chat. I didn't get a real close look at it, but
I put it in the chat. It's their written report, but I'm not sure it has quite all those slides. So we can check and make sure, Regina. That's a great idea.
And the information with the statistics on the school information, that report, that presentation.
Okay. So what I was presenting on the day of Power and Prayer, so we have some fact sheets that we're going to be getting out as well. We need to sort of fine tune that, finish those up. We will definitely get those out. That's all important for us to share. Okay, so let me just ask about tension. Tension is our third component of any good evaluation. Tension acknowledges that we do not live in the world as it should be. We live in the world as it is. And so whenever we're working on anything as a power organization, there's always going to be some tension. So Liza was saying time. I think there's probably just not enough time maybe for us. We jammed everything in. Laura Dennison agrees. Yeah. Anybody else, anything else besides time? Ashley thinks we got it just right. All right. Other people, priorities. How do we prioritize? I think, Pat, you may be saying. How does Noah answer the question about values? What's the perception of who owns Nashville? Right. Thanks, Mary. Man, that is a very good perspective and question. And just the immense needs in Nashville. Thank you, Susie. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Just not going to make this as long of a evaluation as we might normally do because we're right up against the clock. So my political learning is the fourth piece of the evaluation. And so we got a lot of knowledge tonight from the presentation. And probably for a lot of us, it's not shocking to see these figures, but they are powerful. All that red in those maps, poverty level and food insecurity. So I think it is a reminder of the pain that's in our community. And so as Abdul Ghani said, all these things are connected. And I think we sometimes lose track of that all of these issues and so much more, it's all connected. But my political learning is that we are also all connected. And that if we take the time to really recognize that piece and to recognize who else we need to connect with, then we can meet this. We can take this on, these issues, see them as a whole, part of a whole cloth, and really change our community. That's my evaluation.
Okay, we do want to thank everyone. I hope we can get as much of the information. Mike and Brian will work on that along with Kim to make certain that we can get all the information, and we will send out these things to you as soon as possible. And again, we thank all of you for being on a NOAA monthly meeting. I'm going to ask that Reverend Troy Merrick could close us in our prayer tonight.
Reverend, I saw that you had someone who already designated, I thought.
No, that was just faith leader. You wanted the faith leaders.
All right. Really, this is a charge to all of us. Let us go out in the world in peace and not be afraid. Let us not be overcome with evil, but overcome evil by doing good. The very God of peace will work in you, and you, that which is well pleasing in his sight. To the honor and glory of God, this is our prayer that we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Have a good night.
Good night, Marley.
Amen. Good night.
Good night, Reverend Merritt.
Everybody.
Thank you all.
Very glad to have the
Irene.
new people. Glad to have the new folks.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank y'all. Take care.
Good night.
I had hoped there would be more, but anyway, hopefully there's going to be a recording.
Yes, I recorded it.
Okay, great, because they'll see it that way. I think